Colorado's largest school district is using taxpayer money to make sure the kids have internet service to learn. The bill is piling up. The state's oil and gas regulators debate how close drilling should come to schools and homes. A pile of political ads to truth test today. I know just the bespectacled man for the job. They are back from the Arctic ice at home in Colorado with new insights into our changing world. And no Friday is complete around here without your good news. Next. I think we've all had that experience of opening up a bill. You expect one number, you see another number, and you're like, well, that's a little husky. That is the internet bill these days for Denver public schools. Thousands of kids getting subsidized access to online learning using taxpayer money. Arnusha Roy wondered how long that can last.
There are 7 people learning in Zatan Lucero Mills' home.
4 DPS students in the house.
She also has a daughter in college, plus both parents are in school too.
My husband and I are both students. He's in his final year of undergrad at MSU, and I am in my first year of my master's program at MSU.
So the hotspots Denver Public Schools is helping them out with.
That means that we are able to not completely overload the system.
Before the pandemic, DPS was helping out with internet access for a couple hundred students. Now that number is closer to 5,000, and it means the bill for hotspots alone went from around $4,300 a month to over $90,000 a month.
We are currently getting support through the CARES Act funds that are coming through for coronavirus relief. And what happens after December has yet to be determined.
That could include tapping 2016 bond reserves or another pool of federal funding also under the CARES Act. The district is also hoping for more stimulus in the future. The plan right now is for DPS to be remote for most kids through part of October and then gradually welcome all students back when health conditions allow.
We are going to do whatever it takes to make sure that all of our kids continue to have access to computers and the internet at home.
It turns out DPS was already working on improving access to technology for middle and high school students with the blessing of Denver voters before the pandemic, but then COVID hit the fast forward button on their timeline.
We had planned a runway for scaling that district-wide over an 18-month period. It happened in 3 weeks.
Now moving ahead, the challenges are making sure they're reaching as many families as possible, figuring out the funding, and making sure the district has enough computers to replace the older ones.
It is a lot to figure out with a lot of kids depending on it. And the mom we talked to said that she feels like when it comes to funding for internet and computer access, that's going to be a joint effort with everyone from the local level all the way up to the federal level as well. Kyle.
Anusha, this might be kind of like the most elementary thing in the world, but they also have to just figure out who has a reliable internet connection at home and who doesn't.
Yeah, for the first time this year during enrollment, DPS started asking every single family, do you have internet access? Do you have access to computers? We've heard of other districts doing the same. If the answer was no, the district was following up with them. At this point, they're saying their best estimate is that majority of people are okay for the time being, but they are still calling families, trying to check in with them, and said any family can always reach out to their school as well if they would like some help.
All right, a tough challenge. They seem up to it. Hey, if y'all don't watch Anusha on weekend mornings on 9 News, you should do that. Anusha, I'll see you back here next week. Colorado's oil and gas regulators have some decisions ahead of them. The biggie is how close to allow wells and drilling to homes, businesses, and schools. If this sounds like an old discussion, it is. They're deciding this after voters 2 years ago rejected a ballot measure that would have kept new sites 2,500 feet away from those buildings, along with parks and open space. The Democrats, who won office overwhelmingly that year, promised that they were going to do their own oil and gas reform if elected, and they did. They passed a law 16 months ago that gave the regulators fresh power to set rules, and that's what's being debated right now. So here's what they're looking at. Some of what is being discussed is similar to what was proposed in the past. Well would have to be 200 feet from buildings. Apologize, I'm having a difficult time here. New drilling sites would have to be at least 2,000 feet from schools or childcare. 500 feet from homes and apartments. Commission is going to debate this into next week. Final vote is expected next month. Colorado heads into the holiday weekend in a strong position when it comes to fighting the pandemic. And let's see if we can keep these numbers low by making some good choices. 2.75% of tests came back positive yesterday, right at our weekly average. We were down from last week's. 132 people are in hospitals across our state being treated for COVID-19. It's a bit lower than our weekly average, which has hovered around 140 for a while. For an idea on the turnover, like the number of new cases coming in as people leave, in the last 24 hours, 19 people have been discharged or moved to a rehab facility. Tonight's next question comes from Sue. She asked what a few of you did after we told you that RTD might take the money for the long-promised Longmont train and use it somewhere else. Do taxpayers who already paid for their train get any money back? No. No, they don't get any money back. I'm sorry, Sue. You probably assumed that. I know you did. When RTD promises everybody a train and then only gets some people the train that they paid for, everybody in a trainless town is left riding the SOL line. Dramatic pause. I'm sorry, I'm having a difficult time tonight. You know the deal when it comes to political commercials on our air. 9 News journalists don't get any say in what runs in our commercial breaks, but the people who buy and sell those ads don't get to tell our journalists what we can say about them, like what's true and what's not. There are 7 political ads airing in next today, which means Marshall Zellinger is pushing that truth test machine to the limit.
The story of corruption continues.
We start with another dark ad from the National Republican Senatorial Committee, the group that wants Republican Senator Cory Gardner reelected.
John Hickenlooper raised hundreds of thousands from an energy polluter, then gave them $11 million in tax breaks.
No, John Hickenlooper did not personally do this. The ad references Suncor without saying the company's name. In 2008, while Hickenlooper was Denver mayor, Suncor provided $1 million over 5 years to plant trees in Denver. That same year, Suncor also contributed money to Road Home to help people facing homelessness and the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver. What about that $11 million in tax breaks? The claim is based on data compiled by the Colorado Sun last year in an article about tax incentives through the state's Enterprise Zone program. An enterprise zone provides a tax incentive for businesses to locate and expand in economically distressed parts of the state, more rural areas. The governor's involvement is minor. He hires the director of the Office of Economic Development and International Trade and appoints 5 of 11 commissioners responsible for approving where those zones exist. Businesses like Suncor get pre-certified for the tax credit by a local administrator, not the governor.
Hickenlooper let them set their own pollution limits. The result? An orange cloud, a shelter-in-place order for schools, and 8.5 tons of cyanide gas every year over lower-income communities.
No, Hickenlooper did not let Suncor set its own limits. The Environmental Protection Agency did. When the EPA does not have a maximum allowable limit for a chemical, a company is allowed to suggest its own limit. But wait, there's more. One of the newest ads in this TV box here is one from John Hickenlooper, and it takes a negative tone that Hickenlooper has repeatedly said he tries to avoid.
Cory Gardner's on vacation for a month. No relief passed for the unemployed. No expansion of COVID testing. No more help for struggling ranchers and small businesses.
This is another yes and no. Yes, Senator Cory Gardner is not at work in Washington, D.C. Calling it a vacation? No. Just look at his Twitter. He's made multiple Colorado appearances. The Senate actually calls this state work period, where senators go back to their home state for an extended period of time. This is true of all 100 senators, including Democratic Senator Michael Bennet. So saying Gardner is on vacation is a cheap shot. Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is the one with the power to call the Senate back to work. One other note on this ad. While it ends touting Hickenlooper, the first 17 seconds are an attack on Gardner.
Because I can't stand negative ads.
Hickenlooper has made a political career out of not using negative campaign ads, but Hickenlooper paid for this partially negative campaign ad. That Hickenlooper shower ad is from when he first ran for governor, and I can't help but think back to June when Hickenlooper's primary opponent, Andrew Romanoff, modified that into an attack on Hickenlooper, and Romanoff was scolded all the way up and down from prominent Democrats in the state all the way up to Governor Jared Polis. And Hickenlooper was able to use that moment to tout he is a positive campaigner. Now what? I don't know, Kyle.
the positive campaigner thing is always so silly. I mean, I remember when Hickenlooper was running for re-election against Bob Beaupre, he goes, I'm not going to go negative. So his friends just did it instead. They just did the attacking. So, Marshall, here's the thing. We watch these political ads closely, and a lot of times you can tell how candidates view the state of the race, whether they're winning or losing, by the tone that their ads take. You look at all the ads from both sides in that Senate race, and they've got that desperation stink on them, you know?
Well, you can tell because they've got that dark music. They've got the worst images you can find of each other. I'm troubled now that I think back. If I ever run for political office, I've made such silly faces on Next that they've probably got a collection of things, which will never happen because I'm never running for office.
I was about to say, they've got 8 of my flubs on camera today. This show's been like falling downhill. All right. Thank you, Marshall. So, state of Colorado is looking to get creative with the background on our driver's licenses. They're going to ask for suggestions on which iconic Colorado landmark should be featured when the new driver's licenses are rolled out next summer. I'm sure they're going to get a lot of great ideas. So maybe in contrast, some of our ideas. What about if the background of the driver's license was just stopped traffic on I-70 on a holiday weekend? Or maybe the profile of the Purina plant, like if it was scratch and sniff, if you could smell the license. Or maybe, you know what, just be honest and put an outline of the state of California on Colorado's driver's licenses. What do you think? What would be the absolute worst background for our new state driver's licenses? Hit me with your bad ideas. Email next@9news.com or use the hashtag HeyNext on Twitter. I'll read them during the commercial break and share the best of the worst before we go tonight. Work from home with a newborn and a toddler's tough, but at least I'm not one of the Coloradans stuck on a melting ice floe trying to save our planet. We catch up with the scientists home from their mission, and a newcomer to our state found a most Colorado place to live. But will she take it?
Yeah, I mean, when I tweeted that, I had no idea it would get so much traction, and all of these people responding like, oh, this is so Colorado, haha.
That's next. Isolation is relative, you know? Avoiding mass gatherings during a pandemic, that's one level of isolation. Camping out on an Arctic ice floe while it melts around you and a killer virus overtakes the planet, yeah, I would say that is a different level of isolation. Our Cory Reppenhagen catches up with a scientist from Boulder who lived that.
The mission was to spend an entire year on an Arctic ice floe as it drifted towards the North Pole. Dubbed the Mosaic Science Expedition, its purpose was to study the entire freeze-thaw cycle of the Arctic. The scientists, many from Boulder, set out on this ambitious undertaking last September. The harsh climate was a given, but the mission faced many unexpected challenges.
It's really just extraordinary that we were able to do that, really.
Atmospheric scientist Matt Shoup just returned home after 4 straight months on the ice. He knew the ice floe they were camped out on was going to start melting over the summer. He just didn't think it was going to happen so fast.
And so it seemed like, everywhere you looked, it was wet on the surface, and we're like, how are we going to do our operations here because it's wet everywhere?
He said water and slush would pond near their camps and form channels as the ice floe started to vanish.
And then you can really identify, oh yeah, it's safe to walk there, and maybe over there it's not so good. And so, we really kind of on a day-to-day basis had to adapt to this evolving surface.
They shifted camps and repositioned instruments until their ice floe finally melted away completely, which they measured down to the very last cube. As if the floor melting away wasn't hard enough to deal with, enter the 2020 coronavirus.
Airports were closed and different ships were canceled, and so things got a little bit chaotic there for a while.
Shoup says crew replacements and supplies in March were delayed. He spent 2 weeks in quarantine in Germany before joining the crew in April, where he said the isolation of the Arctic was actually a welcome sight.
It was our own little isolated quarantine place where we didn't have social distancing. You don't have to wear masks. We were just interacting with each other very closely, day to day, and we didn't even think about COVID. It was actually really nice to be out there and away from the kind of stresses that we get back here at home.
Meteorologist Cory Reppenhagen for Next.
Wow. Insert joke about being on thin ice at work all the time. Shoup says he considers their mission to be a complete success, despite all the twists and turns. There are a couple of crew members still up there finishing some projects as the ice refreezes, and the Mosaic expedition will officially end by the end of the month. The most Colorado thing we saw today is the true cost of housing in our state. Take the case of Allison Burke, just graduated from college. Look at that, so happy, so excited, doesn't know what the world has in store for her. So she got a job at the Steamboat Pilot and Today, the newspaper. She's going to cover the government up there. Allison's been looking for an affordable place to live, and she found one that was cheaper than all the other places in the area. And a nice enough place, great price. Only little thing is the property owner told her that she'll need to spend 5 hours a week milking the goats. So Allison, you gonna take it?
So, probably not going to take this place. Not just because of the goats, just a few different reasons. I just don't know if it's what's is best suited. And also, I think when you're trying to adjust to for your first real job out of college, you want to have that be your focus and not have to worry about anything else, including milking goats.
It's fair enough. It's fair enough. Covering politicians is enough of a goat rodeo without actual goats waiting for you at home as well. Welcome to Colorado, Allison. We'll take all the local reporters we can get these days.
Good news, Taru and I is being out in the sun today.
Good news and dogs on paddleboards? Yeah, I'll take that. Get your serotonin receptors ready. It's time to actually feel good while watching the news. Next. Fresh air, sunshine, dogs on paddleboards. Man, the good news is just pouring out of the scene at Gross Reservoir today.
It's just beautiful out here.
This is a paradise. Good news is it's a beautiful weekend. And we'll follow it with a great snowstorm on Tuesday.
Well, we did the incline yesterday. I don't have good news, but she beat me going up it.
I get the good news.
She gets the good news.
We had a great time. Everything went beautifully. We've been out for about 2.5 hours. When we came back in, we had a few troubles.
Oh, no. Good news, Taru and I is being out in the sun today and celebrating my promotion.
My good news is I got out of the house. It's the second tax season, so I'm pretty excited. I'm not in front of a computer.
Rue's chances of enjoying this are about 50-50. She loves swimming, even in the ocean, but she's only been on a boat once and she's never been on a paddleboard. She just did it before our very eyes, so I think we'll be okay.
Worst background for the state's new driver's licenses. Few of you said Denver's brown cloud haze. Kurt said bear in a dumpster. And the winner, Ryan, Honda Civic, bald tires, left lane.